We
I'm
are
not
like
saying all that again.
we are like a Swiss clock on this group. I tell you, that's my organized leadership. So that's great news. I've always wondered, so because Ethan does a great job of posting the minutes and the agenda, but I've always wanted to try to get like recordings or anything else related to this committee on the group. So that's fantastic. So that's very good news.
Yeah.
So and so we will get that out. And I can resend it, but I'll continue putting it on to March. I just wanted to give people a heads up. I don't know if people ever use it, but usually I have an existing playlist that is the meetings that have all of them going back. And I also don't know how long we need to keep them or want them. I think I have recordings going back to like 2021 or something like that.
Yeah, back to 2021, we'd probably move them all into Civic Clerk. I know some of our commissions have minutes and videos and stuff, agendas from 2015 and earlier, and I think there's some sort of a practical limit. We don't want to move it.
Okay, great. All right.
But we may not have it on the live system.
Okay. So we got that out of the way. Thank you. I would like to do a roll call really quick of who's here and using the other. Probably should have started all of that before I did this.
You're going in and out, Nate.
I am going in and out.
Yeah.
All right. Let me try to adjust my. Meanwhile, let's do a roll call while I'm adjusting my thing. So, Scott, you could go first. I'm just going to think Scott, Vanessa, Catherine, and then hopefully I'll get my microphone. So, Scott, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, you gotta unmute yourself there first, Scott. This is so. If anybody's ever wondering, I did this with Catherine one other time. If anybody's ever wondering, does the CIO make tech mistakes and make sure that tech doesn't work? Yeah, absolutely. I'm the CIO of Burlington, and I think that's all. I've been here with the city since last March. So.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Santos Eugenio. I work in the Human Resources Department with the City of Burlington. I'm our Talent Development and Diversity Manager, but I also wear lots of other hats.
I'm Catherine Schad. I am the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Burlington.
And just really quickly, can people hear me better now? Okay. So, Allie, you are up.
Hi, I'm Allie Fuddy, and the toddler on my lap is Finley Fuddy. She's also a Burlington resident. I am a homeowner here in Burlington. I also work for the Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired. I'm myself legally blind, and I do a number of things, but my primary role at the Vermont Association for the Blind is as the statewide assistive technology consultant in children's services.
Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Downey. I'm a Burlington resident, and I'm a recently retired occupational therapist. Most recently, I worked full-time in the Burlington schools. I'm also assistive technology trained, but I had to drop my RESNA professional membership because I'm no longer fully employed.
Amber.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amber Fulcher. I'm the ADA 504 coordinator for the University of Vermont.
And Ethan.
Sorry about that. I was just catching up on the minutes. I'm Ethan Fellows, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator here at CEDO, and I provide administrative support for this committee.
Great. And I am Nate Pizzaio. I work for the Vermont Center for Independent Living Burlington office. I run there, and I am the chair of this committee, and I have been here for as long as I can remember. Okay, great. So we got that out of the way. I apologize. I sent people the wrong agenda. So I just sent people updated. I actually was in another meeting, and then that was the very meeting I did. So I do want to review the agenda very quickly. I think we're going to spend the majority of the time going over the proposed memo to the mayor's office. But just news updates, that should be pretty quick. Outreach and promotion. Review the proposed memo to the mayor's office. And then I just thought better, rather than have a traffic of emails going back and forth, to just really quickly review the meeting schedule. Before I do this, Ally, I do want to apologize if we had accessibility. If this format, I sent the memo, I believe in a Word format. I don't know how that is accessibility wise, but if you want this or anything else in different formats that, you know, or find more accessible to you, just let us know. You know, if it's easy to read. So news and updates. I don't know if anybody, I thought Sophie was going to come in. She had something. But I don't know about that. I don't know if anybody wants to say also any news and updates. I can certainly share some from my end. Anybody?
This is Allie. I'm sorry, my dog might bark. Hey, Scamp, stop it. I was just curious. I'm a little newer to this committee. I want to make sure this is an appropriate time to do this, but there was something I had a question about, like in relationship to this committee, and I wasn't sure if this was an appropriate time to do it or if there is later time, you know, for those kinds of things.
In terms of meeting times?
No, sorry, like later in the agenda would be if that
Okay,
would be
yeah, we do have other business, so we can certainly add that to the agenda if there's time.
Okay, yeah, I had a question, yeah, about the, like, something that's come up in the community that I was curious if this committee had a hand in, or should have a hand in.
I do think this should make terms for another time, but we did, you know, when we used the committee, we used to have an opening session for questions by the public at large that they would bring to the committee at the beginning that we would do. I'm certainly okay to open it up now. If we can do that, if you want to bring up, I think that's more important right now than some of this stuff. So Allie, why don't you provide us the questions that you have and we can certainly work on addressing it.
Okay, this is just something that's come up recently, but I was curious if these are like little things that people don't think about as accessibility issues, because it's not like, oh, we're building a new building or something like that. So I don't think that these kinds of conversations come up in this committee. But as a Burlington resident, you know, this is like my everyday lived experience. These are the kinds of things I think about. The city is going through this big redistricting process right now, and like the wards are changing and people are getting shifted around. And I'm not sure how much thought has really been put into the impact that might have on voters with disabilities in Burlington. I think the primary way that a lot of, you know, folks are gonna, oops, sorry. My daughter's opening my AirPods. Can you guys hear me? The primary way that I think, I know you wanted to touch the AirPods. Okay. The primary way that I think, you know, the average person is going to experience that is that their voting location may be changing. And as somebody who uses the accessible voting machines, I will say, like, overall, my experience voting in Burlington has been pretty subpar generally, but like, you know, when you go to one location consistently to vote for years, like slowly but surely the poll workers kind of start to learn, like, oh, we're gonna have a blind person showing up, so we should be ready for that. But I'm sure that there's other accessibility, you know, implications in this redistricting process. So I guess that was one question or thing that's come up for me recently, and it made me think about the ways in which some of these topics don't necessarily get thought about as accessibility topics in the city, but are certainly, in my opinion, accessibility topics. So, I think about people with a range of access needs being redistricted and the impact that'll have on making sure that voters with disabilities in Burlington have access.
Yep, Catherine.
I really appreciate you bringing this up, Allie. I didn't do a good job of explaining what the chief administrative officer does. Part of what I do is budgets. Part of what I do is elections. So this is really relevant. I don't have a role in redistricting, but I will be helping Sarah Montgomery implement whatever they come up with. And I do sit in every city council meeting. I have not heard a lot of conversations about redistricting, and I have not heard anybody come to it from this lens. And I think it's really important. And we're at the end of the process. So I don't know if by chance you have availability tonight for public forum. And if you don't, because I see you have a very busy life and small child, even a letter to city council from this group or from all of us, from some of us, I think to continue to help city councilors to be sensitized to this is really important, because Allie, it's something we talk about. There aren't that many people who use the accessible voting machines. And so
Yeah.
I totally understand what you're saying. Like, we work hard to make sure we have staff who are trained, but I am sure we deal with volunteers. It's not amazing.
Right.
And you're right. If somebody gets very used to like, okay, well, it's accessible, but it's not super accessible if I'm making things up now. If I go to the Miller Center, but I know they let me in the back way there and they're used to me. And now if I have to go somewhere else, like what does
Right.
that look like? One interesting thing is I know city council is looking at a companion. I think it would be a charter change. I'm not sure if it's a charter change or an ordinance change that would allow voters to vote at any, you don't have to go to your own, it's not precinct, your ward,
Polling
or polling
station,
place.
yeah.
Sorry, it's been such a long day. And that's one thing that could help. And maybe that's something that we should press on so that people can then go wherever they feel comfortable. I'm open to other ideas because and because we're getting close to the end of this process, like how can we make sure that this is meeting the needs of the people we're trying to ensure that it is meeting their needs?
Before I go,
other
anybody
ideas?
else? Anybody, Karen?
I can comment because I'm also a poll worker.
Oh, yes.
When I'm Ward 5, so, we've definitely looked at accessibility issues, the physical building, parking, getting in the door, we have an automatic door opener. We're looking at all those details, and luckily we have a staff at Ward 5 that are veteran. So I hope we're doing better than we were 5 years ago. But it's definitely something that all of the wards need to look at with where people vote. When I think of Edmonds Middle School, I don't vote at Edmonds Middle School, but I used to work in that building. So, I know there's real limitations in our buildings. So again, bringing it up at city council, also directly to the city clerk who oversees, if I'm correct, Catherine. I know we're constantly reporting to the city clerk, and does each ward has an official person who organizes.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's really important. Thank
And
you, Allie, for bringing this up.
I think you bring up a good point, because at Ward 5, we do have an experienced group. At Ward 8, for instance, the ward no one wants to be a part of, it's like we have had a lot of turnover. And so that's a ward I would worry about, because we just can't keep consistent volunteers or inspectors there. And so that's one that I can talk to Sarah to make sure somebody's thinking about it, because maybe we don't have as much built-in learning from election to election.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if the current district map ends up passing, the proposed map, I'll go from Ward 3 to Ward 2. So I'm going to go from voting at the Sustainability Academy to IAA, which seems like no big deal, right? I mean, they're super close to each other, whatever. But so I've got to learn a new building, right? I've got to learn where I'm supposed to go into. It's not super easy when you're visually impaired to do that. Who could even ask for help with that?
Yes.
I could go and vote at City Hall ahead of time, but I've got to arrange it to make sure that they're accessible. I know the AirPods are very important. To make sure that, the accessible voting machine would be available for me that day.
Yes.
And then I've been voting in this ward for 7 years or something like that. And every year at the same place. And every year I have to plan on an hour to an hour and a half to vote versus 15 minutes like other folks do. And that's after they've learned kind of what to expect. So
Yes.
I think about, those things, and I'm just one person. So, and certainly not the only person with a disability living in Burlington. So that would impact their access to voting. So anyway, but I think it's a bigger question too, and Nate, maybe this is for you, about like, what are the ways in which, when there are these big things going on in the city that aren't necessarily thought of as like, oh, we need to bring the ADA person in, like, when we know it's like a big thing, right? Like redistricting, that's a big topic in Burlington right now. Like, how can that topic early maybe filter through this committee so that, we can kind of maybe flag places that, oh, this is going to be an accessibility issue, or like, these are some things we need to think about when we're talking about voters with disabilities and how this might impact them. Would just be like a bigger structural thing I would wonder about.
Sorry, I was letting in Sophie. Yeah, Ali, to your point, that was something I was going to bring in. Just so Vanessa had a great point. There is an opportunity for collaborative training with all the wards. Perhaps this already occurs, and I'm aware of the details, but maybe having one separate thing on accessibility training. And there are definitely trainings on how to make your public meetings more accessible. But this kind of goes to a trend that I've obviously seen when it comes to large municipal projects where it's almost like the things come in and the accessibility issue kind of is almost like an afterthought. It comes out later and they go, oh, I've just been also the Burlington High School that we were directing, and we got feedback on accessibility at Burlington High School way near the end. And it's, so what can we do to get involved in this process earlier to make sure voices are heard? And it's just, I think as this committee gets itself built up and more recognized, that's my hope that these topics can be brought out to us for feedback, or we can provide feedback and get on those issues, because it is. My first reply to Ali's is like, well, let's just make sure all the voting places are all really accessible. That would be my first reply, but I do understand that each place has a different entrance and a different area that needs to be mapped out. So the question is, what can we do to make that earlier? And I kind of see this website, maybe providing information about some of that stuff. Yep, Catherine.
I do
Parking
see,
too.
yes, I think parking is a really big issue, especially at polling places, especially at Edmonds. But I think this is a really good point, Kate and Ali, and I wonder if building some time into our agendas for both, like this input from Ali, like I feel that's very valuable. I feel like it was a big mistake, if I'm speaking frankly, on the part of the administration to not say like, hey, we need to talk about accessibility with the school. And I think that is partly because people who have been around, worked in the city, or just been around the city, realize like the city and the school, we pretend like we're one, but we're kind of separate. And so we kind of let them do their thing. We don't have them on this committees, and that's how that happened. It's not an excuse, it's just the way it works. With this, and I think overall we are starting with better integration with public works and with parks on some of these bigger infrastructure projects to get that input earlier. But we don't want to limit ourselves, and things like redistricting, like I'm like, duh, of course, that's really important. We should have thought of that. But maybe like, as if Scott and I can say, here are like 5 big things going on in the administration over the past month. And then you guys can say like, oh yes, that's where it intersects, or vice versa. Like, we've just started to do now, like, here's what I'm hearing about in the community, let's talk, but I think some of that dialogue, if we can share, maybe will come up.
Yeah, and I'm certainly hoping, I'm definitely going to add in line to the agenda opening public comment or public questions that we'll have at the beginning of the agenda. I also just think I'm going to have a, kind of a template agenda that I can send out really early to Ethan, just so we can, get the public announcement out there, so it's on there, and maybe kind of build on that later if we need be with more specific. So building that part into the agenda, and maybe even just have an announcement. Well, we have news and updates for upcoming projects. So that would be something that we can also just take time to discuss that at the beginning of the agenda, but all good around. Amber.
Yeah, so, I just wanted to second that. I think that opportunity to hear what the big projects are that are going on at each meeting and figuring out where it may be important to weigh in we should really prioritize that, just because I feel like oftentimes folks just don't know where to focus. And having that opportunity would be really helpful.
Can I
Right.
just also make a comment? I was on the planning committees for the new high school, and there have been 4 planning committees for the new high school over the past 15 years. And I want everyone to know that all of the ADA requirements were focused on. There are some architectural design issues that could have been improved. Number one is the big staircase in the atrium. So I don't want people to walk away with the idea that accessibility wasn't on the front burner as we were looking at the redesign or the total rebuild of the high school. And the most recent architectural firm involved with the high school was not involved prior. So there's been a lot of cooks in the kitchen, shall we say, but the basic ADA accessibility issues, yes, they were attended to.
Yeah. I just add, I don't want to make it sound like I'm like cod-piling on the school. It's actually good to know that the school district isn't really certain part with the municipal. I keep on pushing to hopefully have somebody from the school board on this committee. My feeling about when it comes to ADA issues is anytime there's a new structure building built, it's going to follow ADA standards. It's required to. That's the law. What can we do to make sure it is kind of beyond that, but also kind of taking the more humanizing approach to it. So that's what I think about it. And then when it comes to ADA issues, is really, kind of taking existing structures that have been around prior to the standards and making sure that they are following that same suit. So that's where I kind of look at this committee being on. I mean, we looking at that is, I would certainly hope that new buildings being built are or being renovated with federal funds or something like that are going to be ADA compliant, because that's the law. But then again, the law is also for existing structures to do stuff, and that's not really being forced. So I kind of see our role being too found with that. But good point, good point about that with the school. So okay. So moving on, just really quick news and update. The presentation to the ward, I think I told you, to ward 3 and 4 regarding this committee, that's being done in February. So I'll be doing that. I'm already working on a slideshow, which I will be sending to this group. I believe it is February 9th, February 6th. I have it in my calendar, but it is sometime on there. So I'll be doing that group to get some more promotion out there. I also met with people and I looped Sophie in this, but I did take a group in there. So I did meet with a group that was part of the Lake Champlain Chamber of Commerce. That there was a group that were working on improving accessibility for people who are blind and visually impaired. And this is a group put together, just wanted to know what would be done to improve that, really looking for mainly focusing on the waterfront and parkways, and really kind of focusing on what question was that. So they mainly had questions about what's being done, maybe some suggestions about apps, like phone apps that could be due to maybe provide a verbal cue for something that Scott, I don't know you've heard from them or not, but it was yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up. Last fall, I talked with John Thomas from VABVI about a new sign that they are paying for out of a grant that's going to go up at the waterfront. What, Sophie, you're saying no?
So they've put, just to be clear, they've put in a community request from Penny for Parks, and they were approved, they will likely be approved. The Park Commission needs to approve those funds. But so it's not a grant, and Parks would be managing all of it. But the idea was brought forth by John. And so
Okay.
just,
All right.
just so you know the backstory of it, it will be a parks project. And I was going to bring it up as well. So this is a good segue, but I won't continue to interrupt you. So
No, it's fine. I literally had a note from John today saying, hey, the tactile sign will be funded in full. So I'm like, okay. So I apologize. I assumed that meant they were doing it because when he was talking to me before, he was going to, and the whole reason he was talking to me was because they want to put a QR code on that sign. And then he wanted to know if we had a place where we could store the information for the QR code and we can make that happen. So there will be, kind of, Nate, to your point, there will not only be a tactile sign theoretically, but if that sign goes in, there'll be a QR code on it that somebody could click on it with their phone or their tablet, and then it would take them to a site that could read information to them, and other approaches. So that'll be pretty cool. And then also, Sophie, I'll touch base with you because Thomas Moore from Leadership Champlain is looking to meet with us about Oak Ledge Park and accessibility. So I'm sure because I know what work we're doing down there, you'll have better information about that than I ever will. So I'd rather put him in touch with you.
that sounds good.
Yeah, that was the group. Oh, go ahead, Sophie. You're
Sorry,
the one.
I was just going to follow up on the sign at the waterfront. So we met with him on Friday, and I was going to bring it to this group just to see if anybody wanted to meet out there in terms of the location of the sign when we get to that point. But first we have to get approval from Parks Commission, which should be at the beginning of February. But we just want to know if anyone wants to meet out there, then we'll coordinate that with John, our team. And then I think there was a Parks Commission member also who wanted to be part of that sighting of the sign. But to Scott's point too, with the QR code, we're hoping to get a description of the area. So it's something that could be heard, but also translation, just to increase that accessibility of the information that we're providing on our signage. So just to add another layer to it from a different perspective.
Good. And if you want to send me, I'll see if I can attend. But thank you. That was the group that had met with me for Leadership Champlain. And I'm glad you two got pitched in because I had no idea what they're talking about. They're like a song time code, a thing. And I'm like, oh no, that's outside my pay grade. So I said, talk to
Sophie, if
Sophie.
you let me know too, I might be able to attend.
Okay.
Great, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I also will likely probably be there just simply because I work for VADV, and John and I have been talking about this project a lot. He knows I'm on this committee, so I'll probably hear from John, but also probably hear from you that this is happening.
Yeah. Allie, also, if you don't know of anybody, I mean, I'd also, anytime there's an accessibility related thing being done for a particular group, I always like to try to get as many people represent. I don't know if you have any contact with anybody else who are part of the visually blind or visually impaired community, but if you think of anybody else who might be able to go there, I would suggest we invite them as well. Yeah,
that are Burlington residents. I don't know, I have to think about Burlington residents. I know John has been really seeking out feedback from folks in the community about this project. It's like something that's really important to him. So he also might have some insight about that too, that he could share about the feedback he has gotten.
Okay, great. All right, so moving on very quickly, and I sent this out later, but at the last meeting we discussed a possibility of doing a memo to the mayor's office, basically giving him a summary of what we have accomplished, and because I know we had wanted to possibly use the funds that we had diverted to some particular things, putting up signage for like how to make the place more accessible, maybe adding some things to the parking areas, just letting people know that people with placards can park free and some other things. So I made a very quick version of that, and I guess and I asked Ethan to look it over and do any editing, although he is kind of doing this thing where he's patting his head and rubbing his belly at the same time, because he's also taking the meeting minutes, but I'm going to just hand it over to Ethan. If you want to bring that up, we can look at it through. We don't have a ton of time, so maybe this is something that we can look through now really quickly and then add or make edits on, virtually. And do that. So Ethan, are you able to share? Is that gonna be something where you can share now, or is that something I did make you co-host?
Yeah. Give me 1 second. I will
Okay.
pull that up. Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yeah, it's tiny in print there, but
Yeah, let me blow that up. How does this look? I can just scroll up and down. I
Yeah.
don't think I'm going to be able to get the whole thing in and have it be particularly legible.
yeah. Yep. So what I'm just looking for, people, is obviously help me look over my grammar, but also when adding, so I kind of did this in two parts because we did send a memo to the mayor in May where we had already done some things, and I wasn't sure whether to add that on for a full year, but just since that time I was doing it. So these were some of the accomplishments that I had us put down, but if anybody can think of any others, or if people think of anything they'd like to add or correct, that is, so now I already see grammatical errors that I obviously made, so that's
Yeah,
something
I'm
that
going
popped up.
to go ahead and post the link to the memo as well in the chat.
Okay. Yeah.
If people want to take a look at it themselves.
I missed last month, so I don't have all the backstory on this. I think that providing an update is a really good idea. In terms of this kind of second half of the letter where we kind of are like asking permission to spend the money that we have in our budget. Are we doing that because we want to tell him what we're spending things on, or because we think we need permission, or because we're unsure?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think it was to let the mayor know that these are some of the things we want to do going forward, notify him, and also I personally wasn't sure what kind of mechanisms we need to utilize those funds. Do we just, do we have to let CEDO know? Do we buy something to spend a bill? Does CEDO have a card that they automatic? That was more understanding that. So that was my feeling, was a little bit of both on that end. But we also want to let the mayor know, we've done some things, we want to take it further, and we thought that was necessary. The other members can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I thought.
I think that we should keep it as an information, and I understand the lack of clarity on the 15,000, but I think that we have it in the budget, and if we follow our regular procurement policies, that we shouldn't need any other special permission to spend the money beyond what anyone else needs in the budget. And so I don't think we need his permission to do these things. I think we should just say we're planning to do these things in accordance with our policies, and we just wanted to let you know, which is kind of how this is worded. But what I don't want is for us to have to wait to get an affirmative response back from him. And I don't think we have to. So that's my guidance. And I can provide how we pay for it, how we code it. Like, I will work with Ethan, you, Nate, whoever, on the mechanics, because that's part of my job.
That's great. Thank you for that information. Yeah, so there was some things that we weren't unsure about, like, also like for the part of, one thing we had talked about is, on and this would probably be public works thing is, one of the things we had talked about is creating something to go on the payment machines for the tolls that say, if you have a placard, you don't have to pay for parking. We don't want to go rogue and just run with stickers on and something like that. So what do we
Yes.
need to do for that step? What do we need to, we had talked about flyers and things going on, like how to make yourself more accessible. Can we run around as the, City of Burlington Advisory Commission and just post them everywhere on there? That was more, and maybe
Got
you'd
it.
be the perfect question to ask that. That was,
Good, and I think that's right. We can use this letter and I can follow up in my weekly meeting with the mayor to find out some of the answers to these things.
Okay.
I think that's right. It makes sense.
Okay. So again, I guess the next part would be looking through, and I was just using our meeting minutes again to look about some of the things we may have done already and all the things we did, but look at what we're planning to do and hope to do. And am I missing anything? Am I overshooting things? Am I undershooting things? Am I, and again, there's things like this where I don't know would we be part of our budgetary things. And I do mention things to the website, which Scott also already mentioned some things taking place. So maybe that doesn't need, or, obviously we don't need budgetary, but just let him know that. And also, I know we talked about giving presentations somewhere that Vanessa mentioned at the last meeting that could be utilized as a, municipal space. So this is something I kind of threw together. And I just wasn't sure if people have any feedback on it, and it could be fine tuned and finalized, by the end of this week or, to send it out. But that's what I wanted to just get everybody's feedback on.
Would you want feedback now, Nate? Like if there's something specific?
The question is, can we? I mean, I think the thing is just Ethan can type it in. I'm also keeping an eye on the clock. My question is, do you think we have time to do feedback now, or do we want to do this, kind of put this on edit mode where people can go in and change it? It's I'm just looking at the time. Do we have enough time? Because we are, we're basically at, we have less than 15 minutes. So I guess my suggestion would be to send it, let people review it and look at it and provide their feedback. But I don't know what other people think about that.
I'm happy to do that. I just have like a broad general idea like that. I just want to put out there real quick. Instead of, it's not like a specific like edit necessarily. If that's okay.
Yeah.
So I have concerns about us saying that we're going to use some of that funding to pay to fund website changes.
Agreed.
I think that lies within, the city's wheelhouse more. And then I think that it's probably going to take more resources in this and a strategic plan to make sure that the websites are really complying with all of the federal guidelines or the BACA guidelines. And so I think you said something maybe like about an overshoot. I think that might be an area where we want to scale back. If we want to provide some consultation or feedback, I think that's a more in line. Like that's a goal that would be more in line with what we could do. But that's such a small amount of money, and that's such a big project.
Yeah, and just to keep everybody here posted, Civic Clerk is going to be much more accessible than Board Docs has been. It's going to be ADA and WCAG compliant. So yay for that. And then also we are also looking at a new back end for the website that if we bring that on, we'll also have a lot of additional accessibility features as well that will meet ADA and WCAG requirements as well. So those are, Amber, to your point, those are all being taken into account already. So I agree with you. I think that's something, and Catherine will kick me under the table if I'm speaking out of turn here, but I think that's something the city is obligated to provide and not lean on a commission to hopefully fund it. Because like you said, that is significantly more expensive than $15,000. And we've got a lot of other stuff we can do with that money through this commission when the city is going to be doing the website anyway.
That's great. That's
Anybody
great
else?
to hear, you know, that you all are doing the infrastructure. Sorry, Nate, go ahead.
No. So I guess if anybody else has anything to add, I think, when we think about this money, obviously the big parts, we have the printing and distribution of some materials, which is good. But is that, what are some ways that we can best use this fund? Does anybody find any way that might fit within those $15,000 budget that maybe there's a little more we could do? Or, I don't know the numbers. I don't know what the numbers of distributing, printing and sorting out stuff. So I just think we need to think of some of the stuff we could do. Whether there is any things we can do to help physically change structures. I know when this money was first thought about doing it, we thought maybe what could be used to help put any minor accessibility changes into certain facilities. I think that was some of the ideas, is that maybe looking at, okay, this, I don't even know, because it was something that was brought up to previous commissioners that were on here, kind of said, well, let's see if we can use this fund to make any minor upgrades in terms of some of the infrastructure of someplace accessibility. Maybe that might mean helping, maybe there's some lost fundings on a crosswalk that has not had a buzzer in a while, and maybe we could use that. But I don't want to be crossing over into what Public Works or what anything else does for municipal projects like that. But just my suggestion is that we look at the memo, and people can make changes or edits to it, make any additions, and then we can make a finalized version for that.
I have a question. Just regarding that last point, Nate, that you were talking about making changes to physical structures.
Yeah.
Just wondering, because that's a big undertaking, I think, for an advisory committee, if there's ever the reverse where like for example, Parks comes and says, we want to add, I don't know what, X, it'll be $5,000. We don't have it in our budget. Can that be a source for us to make the changes that are needed, that are beyond, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just thinking about Oakland, right? You know how much funding we've gone after for that.
So that's a good, you're basically talking about using it as a supplement of some sort to maybe like, maybe they're missing some fund and looking for a little bit of supplement money. Can this money be put for a supplement? I think that's a great idea. I don't know the answer, but
right.
But
I'm just curious. Sorry, this is Allie. What, like, when the mayor put this in the, in the budget, like, what do we know what the intentionality was with that budgeting?
Yeah, when we requested the mayor, I mean, we kept it kind of open, and I'll be happy to provide you and anybody else who's new to the committee some of the initial memos that we sent. So we requested, and it was for, and this is what I'm getting back to. We did put something in, and it was almost purposely vague, but a lot of it was really seeking administrative help and administrative assistance, which we're great in getting at Ethan. And then also some of the promotion and staging events. But what I'm saying, I seem to remember, and this goes back, was when Emma and Martha were part of this committee, them saying maybe we can take some of the funds and use them for projects. And I think what Sophie says is a good suggestion, is maybe instead of looking for something, saying, would we be able to allocate a certain amount of that if it's available to supplement other municipal projects that maybe aren't complete to improve their accessibility. That I don't know. But I do know that in the initial proposal that we wrote, that was something that was included. And this was going back to 2020, I think, that we were initially doing that, first trying to get the funding, first trying to do things, and then went through CDU. So I think what I would do is I would go back and look at the initial memos, discovering that, and I could send people copies of that, but also review what it was for.
I would say, having talked about this with Moreau a little bit, he seems pretty flexible on what we use the funding for. It was an amount requested by whoever was on this committee at the time. And I don't think he's very, invested in the weeds of what we spend it on. I think he is really looking for us to make the best use of it. And last year, I don't think we spent much or any of it. And so I do want to make sure we spend it so that we can continue, like I'll put in the same amount for FY24, because I don't ever want us to give it up, you know, it's
Yeah.
harder to get it back. And it would be nice to be able to show like we're putting it to good use. And so I don't think there's any restriction. I think part of the reason why we originally weren't necessarily highlighting projects is because, as we all know, Sophie, most of all, 15 grand doesn't buy us a lot of projects, but every little bit helps. And if we have it there, we should totally use it for whatever, Oak Ledge or any other priority thing that you guys think of that we all agree on.
Yeah, well, I can certainly tell you from working with Sophie on Oak Ledge, you get these certain things where, you have a project, you think it's funded, then it comes back more expensive. And Sophie's been great, like building up, getting grants here, getting grants here, getting grants there, and just another, couple $1,000s or something, pushing us towards the goal of getting something, I think would be helpful. So I'm thinking maybe adding a line is supplement, use or supplement, funds to and purchase equipment to improve accessibility or something along that line. I do think that would be a good line to add.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about the sign that Scott was referring to earlier, it'll be about $6,000 for that sign. And if it's a success, can we replicate that idea at Oak Ridge? That's where I see this. It's not a huge pot of money, but $6,000 will make a big difference in increasing access to a park,
Yeah, and if it is a success, we could, put it to other parks and other places around the waterfront. That'd be a very good idea. Okay. So why don't we do this? We can send out the link to everyone. What I'm going to do is I'll probably do it in comment mode, just so people can edit in comments, and then once we all agree, we can send it out. I would say, if possible, let's try to get this finalized by the end of this week. And then what I can do is I can mesh everything together in a final version. We can take one last look, and if we okay it, we can send it to the mayor's office. Sound good? All right. So I do have one last thing I wanted to add just before we go out. So let's take this off of screen share. Ethan, I'm knocking you down.
I'm sorry. Did you say something? I was just
Oh yeah, I was taking us out of screen share because I just wanted to because I want to go really quickly to the proposed schedule for the upcoming year. And there were a couple days that we have conflicting with conflicting with holidays. So they mainly I think it's this coming I can't get it to stupid.
I think it's the 20th.
Yeah, so anyway, the two signs that we're missing with, and I'll talk about now, is we have interference with holiday is President's Day, I think. And then in June, we're interfering with Juneteenth. So my proposed schedule is, if I can get to it past this stupid, that little thing at the top of my screen for go away. There we go. All right, hold on here. So the proposal to move on the Fridays afterward. Yeah. So this is the proposed meeting dates we have. Basically taking the February meeting and moving it to the week following the Monday after President's Day. All the rest are on the third Mondays. The only exception is June. So that's the week of Juneteenth. That one is a federal holiday, but the week afterwards, schools are on break. So that last week, schools are on holiday break, and I also know that I personally am going to be out of town, so I'm going to be off. So this is to meet it a week earlier. So instead of meeting on the week after, we meet it a week earlier. So I did want to see people's availability and just make sure that schedule works with everybody. And what I will do is I'm going to just send, instead of creating a long, like, 3-year calendar, I'm just going to do it annually. So I'll send every invite to a calendar about that. So I guess my question is everybody okay with the schedule coming up?
Yep.
Okay. The other question I have is it possible, ultimately on our webpage to kind of put up these meeting dates, upcoming meeting dates? I think we say meeting on the third Monday, but I'm just wondering if we want to just put up our meeting schedule on.
Yeah,
on the,
we should. We should do that. I mean, that's certainly one of the benefits that Civic Clerk will offer us.
Okay.
Ethan, I'm assuming, Ethan, you're the web administrator for the commission? All right, then.
Yeah.
Yes, Ethan can do that.
Yeah, I can definitely
Okay.
help out with that.
Okay, perfect. All right. So that is that. So we will work on the memo, and provide your feedback. What I could do is what I might do is I might send a link to everybody again. I want to make sure the document's on comment mode. And then I will resend everybody. Well, I don't need to do that. I just need to just look at it. And then we can look at that. And if we can get comments or anything to it by the end of the week, that would be great. Then I'll put everything together, and then early next week, I will send it along. Okay, well, we're at 4:01. All right, everyone. Any last comments? Nope. All right.
Thanks.
Farewell.
Have a good one.
You too.